Hi, good morning everybody. Good morning. My name is Luca Catti and today with Emilia-Romagna Region we're going to talk about with Riccardo Pantofi of HSP, our partner, about this project. So Riccardo, if you want to greet everybody. Good morning everybody. Thank you for the opportunity the region is giving us today to talk about this important project and hold a presentation about it. Thank you very much, Riccardo. And today we're going to talk about an experience that we are still doing today because we are implementing a migration of CMDBuild, the 2.5 version to the new 3 version. So we're going to have an overview of our experience with CMDBuild, and we're going to have a step-by-step description of this migration, because this is not just a simple upgrade, it's not just a version change, but it's something deeper and more radical for sure. So I'm not wasting any more time because I want everybody to understand the complexity of this project and to describe all of the content. So let's move on. Our experience is not just pushed forward by the will to move from one version to the other, but by the will of having a very important project. So the regional context is a very complicated one because of institutional reasons, because of course we had to reorganize the body itself, the institution itself in recent times. And also the reason for all of this is related with a digital transformation process. This digital transformation process is not just a theoretical initiative due to the implementation of regulations in order to digitalize the services, but also because the body itself feels the need of implementing and doing what has been done so far, but in a different way. So not just using digital services as such, but redesigning all of the processes that we're implementing. So this process is strongly dynamic, and all of the users themselves, that's to say the stakeholders on the other side of the interface, because the region is of course an intermediate body. We are not facing the citizens themselves as the municipality, for instance, but has an intermediation role, a negotiation and representative role, and therefore there are lots of expectations on part of the school, research activities and bodies, the production plants and industries, and also in terms of environmental protection. There are lots and lots of expectations, and the region has an important role in this, plays an important role, and the stakeholders are looking at us as a point of reference, of course, in order for them to receive answers. And therefore we need our processes to be reactive and proactive in order to anticipate needs, and therefore there are more and more expectations from the stakeholders. But in this context it's also important to speak the same language, because the body of the region is a very articulated and complicated, complex system, and therefore this is a vital step. So in this dynamic context, also assistance and support has to change, because we need to be able to face support requests in such a way that independently, regardless of the model or the organization variance, you can be able to give answers in real time, and answers that can be a solution, of course. In this context, it's also important to have players in the individual structures with digital skills, but also organizational skills, and that can be pivot reference points for the whole organization. So in this context, it's also important for the information to be conveyed, to be accessible to everybody, because information is power, we used to say, and this is true. And in some cases, information can become an obstacle to digitalization and innovation, so we have to manage them in a proper way. Sharing information can create more value if we are not just storing the information, but we share the information. And this is also a reason why we wanted to implement this project. And on the other hand, of course, it's impossible to avoid this, because in a context where you have interconnection and where production activities and people working activities are performed all day long, 24/7, you need to have a continuous service providing. So you don't need to just have office hours, of course. You need to have a 24/7 service. And in terms of numbers, the numbers for the region are quite big, of course. We're talking about a very high number of users in the inside and in the outside. And I mean people cooperating with us. 6,400 people are working for the region and with the region. And the users of our services is over 30,000 users in terms of application services or in terms of services in general, the services you can get from the different regional bodies. The headquarters have become about 100 offices because, of course, we've also incorporated all of the work agencies in our institution, and these are scattered over the territory. They were about 120 in 2017, and now they are twofold, about 300, and therefore you need to have more operators, because you've got over 400 operators in terms of ticketing, and you have several groups. The service catalogue is including services that go beyond ICT as well nowadays, and this structure has over 330 business services that are listed here that can be browsed and required by the users. So not just ICT services, but also other services. So our platform is a very integrated platform. We aim at having several players in the architectural and other systems and other fields, and of course all of this is part of a context of the region, and the region has to be conceived as a multiplayer, such as a holding, like a holding, because it encompasses agencies, institutions, research bodies, and civil protection players, agricultural players. So it's a very, very varied reality and world. And of course it's sharing processes, because the processes have to be shared and are crosswise to the institution. No service is working on its own, and therefore you need to have a common infrastructure, a shared infrastructure for all the service we are managing. 10 of them are new. Of course, we introduced them lately, and so in recent times, and we're going to describe them in short. And of course, we're talking about big volumes, thousands of tickets every year for support requests, of course. Now, by moving on, we can also say something else. Why did I want to describe the processes? Why are they so important? Because these processes are crosswise, as I was saying. The processes are enabling the institutions to speak, and they make it possible for knowledge to move from one institution, from one structure to the other. And of course, they collect all of these system services from the region in one body, in one single entity. So as a matter of fact, what you have is that CMDBuild was introduced in 2011 for asset management, excluding all of the process management that was then implemented with the integration of a ticketing platform and CMDBuild. So basically we kept the two worlds separate. But after 8 years having this infrastructure, we decided to convert process and asset management in one single thing, together with the version number 3 of CMDBuild. So it seemed to us to be the most reasonable choice, and it was a strategic choice because it was a lever for change, a flywheel for change, because we wanted to sort of make all of the requests homogeneous. So it wasn't just a step to simplify, organize and standardize. In short, we will also have an overview of the architecture that we started with and the architecture we aim to. This path made it possible for us to also recover from the organizational point of view, and I'm not just talking about ICT, I'm talking about the organization of the individual structures, where the day-by-day management were a sort of problem, actually. They weren't a routine. We didn't have an operational context, but we had an emergency context, and therefore introducing standardization processes, thinking about a service catalog, changing perspective, and considering processes and not just the management of an individual problem or an individual request made it possible for many structures to become more effective from the organizational point of view. So, of course, behind all of this, you've got IT. ITIL, you probably know ITIL due to direct experience with them or due to the topics IT is implementing or the applications IT is putting forward, for instance. And sometimes, so usually we are speaking about adopting and adapting, this is our slogan, but sometimes it's difficult to adopt. And more specifically, what we wanted to do was make it possible for these instruments, for these tools, to be explained in a proper way to all of the structures who needed such tools, such instruments, in order for these tools to be at hand, to be handy. So we needed all of these structures to take the first step, of course, because this is vital, of course. You need them to believe in these services in order to start the process. So basically, we decided to adopt CMDBuild 3 with an integrated platform for all of the management services and for the management of all of the configuration items. This was the step. Now I'd like to show you the most technical aspect of it, so the geeky aspect of all of this, that's to say, the current structure of the service management system, the IT system. As you can see from this image, it's an architecture that also implies processes that are also indicated by these yellow arrows, based on frames that stand for the technological platforms supporting processes. Of course, in the current situation, as I was saying, not all of the processes are there, but they are identified nonetheless because they are de facto processes. That's to say, people are using these processes and are working based on habits and steps. So the process is there, it exists, it's maybe a little bit hidden, it's not evident, but it's there. With CMDBuild 3, we are highlighting these processes. So these processes are becoming more evident, traced, and they can be connected with very precise management steps in the process. So you've got a depiction of reality, basically. We started with the basics of ITIL, with the basics of requirement fulfillment, operations and service management. So we started from there and then we implemented several more processes. Of course, it wasn't easy to widen the range. We had several obstacles, but after a few years, the situation was good enough for all of the other processes as well to come out, because of course we need the other processes to be implemented too. So as you can see in the diagram, there is an articulation of several systems. So several systems together articulating in order to support the different processes. We've got ticketing services with CMDBuild in the center and monitoring systems or processes as well for the different infrastructures and systems and institutions. This is an IT world, the intranet, which is on for us, Active Directory, SAP for HR, Information for NOH, which is a business intelligence platform, and also Redpoint, which is our SharePoint instrument, SharePoint tool for knowledge management. Now, the new design, the new infrastructure, the new architecture will lead us to this ecosystem for service management, where CMDBuild 3.0 becomes a catalyst for processes, where, as a matter of fact, what was the infrastructure line is a new line with CMDBuild in the middle, with all of the monitoring systems, but all of the core processes develop on the CMDBuild 3 platform. The integration with the rest of the world is necessary, of course, because the rest of the world is the intranet, the knowledge management platform, the HR platform, and so on. All of the other systems and applications that are contributing to information enrichment for CMDBuild are necessary, and therefore you need connectors as well. So integrations and connectors are very important nowadays. Integrations make it possible to add something more, an added value to CMDBuild data. And this makes it also possible to develop new strategies, not just operations. So it's not just operational side, but also strategic side. And this helps all of the other processes and tools, of course. So you really have a value creation chain in this whole system, in this whole structure. Now, I don't want to give you too many details about the architecture. Of course, if you need to know more, if you have questions, feel free to ask us, of course, when you have the opportunity to ask questions or use the other tools to interact with us, to ask questions. But let's see the benefits we can get from this initiative. Here you've got a summary. It's a circular diagram where you have CMDBuild READY2USE in the middle. Let me just spend a few words about the ready-to-use application. Ready-to-use means we decided to standardize all of the processes also using a standard product. So we haven't selected CMDBuild 3, but the ready-to-use version in this case, because we wanted to standardize our logical model, our data management model, and therefore we selected the ready-to-use version. Now, we aim at simplifying management and maintenance in general for the system by simplifying the structure itself, because of course it's difficult to keep too many integrators and too many connectors. Of course, it's necessary to have all these elements to have more information, but it's also necessary to concentrate everything in one single tool in order to support the workflow all together in a simpler way, and we think this is an added value to our system. In general, such a platform also makes it possible to be more agile in following change, so integrating configuration items with other different systems as well makes it possible to have a global overview and enables us to understand what happens everywhere. It's like the butterfly wings on the other side of the world. So we are not aiming at managing chaos, of course, because there's no chaos, but we want to have a global overview of the system in order to anticipate needs and expectations. The whole information set is digitalized and concentrated and can be delivered through one single platform. And in such a way, knowledge becomes a shared factor, because this is an information system for the company items. So it's a central crossroads where all of the crucial points of the system go through. I'd like to use the remaining time to also give you a general overview of the phases, the implementation stages of our service management ecosystem. These stages are divided up into 5 milestones. That's to say, requirement identification, the creation of a feasibility study, and a migration plan for a calendar, a schedule for the implementation, the development configuration, the design of new plans in order to manage tests and criticalities coming out from the tests, and finally the rollout stage with the implementation of the new model. These 5 stages have been developed over a time of 12 months, as you can see here, a 12-month time. But this is, of course, a simplification of reality, because there are lots of criticalities. A case history needs to be as real as possible, of course, and this is not just changing from what we've done and what we want, but we think that it's a contribution to all of those who'd like to have a similar experience. And in order to do this, we need to understand all the criticalities, all the problems, and understand how to mitigate and solve these problems. So as you can see, the schedule encompasses 12 months and consists of 5 main steps or milestones. I'm not going to describe all of the 5 stages and tell you again what's inside of the stages, but I'd like just to stress that we are towards the end of this implementation steps and program. Of course, there are some criticalities, some problems caused by a very difficult context due to a global difficult situation. We are trying to face these problems that you can only probably find in Hollywood films and movies, although nowadays these problems have become part of our reality, so we need to manage these problems. And of course they vary a lot, they change a lot over time, and therefore we need to adapt our projects over time. And as a consequence, we also had to change something, to change the way the work team has been managed. So we started with presence meetings and presence work groups who've worked for months and months, and then we have to interrupt all of this, to stop all of this, and do everything remotely, so from a distance. And this urged us to change our organization too. As I showed you with the numbers referring to all of the involved stakeholders and players, so 400 operators together with the analysts as well, those who are designing the processes. So not just 400, but different profiles, not just users, but 400 different profiles with dozens of people working in the work groups in order to define the single processes. So a varied group of people, and this also makes it possible to collect feedback from them in order for this feedback to be implemented and managed. But by the way, inevitably, such a complicated process has some limits, also in terms of communication and understanding, because something that is communicated to a player can be understood by another player in a different way, or slightly different way, or totally different way. So it is necessary to develop a shared understanding, of course, for the implementation and development. So the region itself had to develop a new understanding to use the platform, to change the platform, to implement the platform. From the project point of view, it's smart to have short rollout cycles, release cycles, in order to understand whether the processes have been implemented in the right way. And of course, wireframing and mock-up strategies were implemented to increase the awareness about the requirements. And another criticality is the complexity of the structure and its articulation. Of course, activating so many connectors to the outside world and activating so many processes all together makes it possible for the project to be very complex and not linear as a whole. So the project implies, of course, revising and changing strategies from time to time. And the parallelization of work that was a winning strategy at the beginning, so working for self-help on the portal, developing the connectors and the services, made it possible for these three strategies to create some obstacles for the others. So it wasn't a real parallelization of the system, it was a sort of implementation of work in a non-linear way. And it was difficult to understand the final aim of all of this. So we've been working on this in order to solve this problem, and we worked on this with all of the stakeholders in initiative, HSP as a partner, for instance, for the functional management of the project, and Tecnoteca, who's the technology partner, and of course, first and foremost, the whole staff involved in the requirement collection, in the test sessions, and this team is also working with Tecnoteca and HSP in order to solve all the criticalities and problems and to get to the first version rollout. So the first version with the region configuration within the planned time. So we revised all of the work methods of our team, both for the analysis and implementation activities. We tried to shorten the production chain in order for the time to be shorter from the requirement to the technological implementation. And therefore, we increased the number of meetings between the users and the developers in order to have a better information exchange and opinion exchange in order to better understand the reality we had. And also the requirement comprehension understanding test was vital in order to get a final proposal. So we are trying to solve all of the issues we have by working with a technical team in order to shorten the chain and to get to the solution as soon as possible so that the release candidate can be rolled out and put in production, basically. So we need a consistent version. We are aiming to finding a consistent version. We are setting priorities in all of this in order to work on priorities first of all, because afterwards, with the next releases, we'll be able to make it possible for the product in its core configuration to meet the structure requirements and to be a sort of passage, to be a sort of transition without any problems and criticalities. So we are generating acceptance. We are working on the acceptance in order to improve the system for each release. In this way, we are meeting the expectations and requirements that were collected in the previous stages. So the aim is to get to a version release that is able to remove the old structure in terms of processes and to be fully satisfying to support the migrated processes. So this is the whole picture. So now I need to drink a glass of water because I've been talking all the time. I hope I haven't been boring you, and I now give the floor to my colleague so that he can add something if he wants to. Yes, the only thing I'd like to add to your very deep and detailed explanation is the paradigm change, the system change that was a real opportunity in this project. So moving from an IT service management to a service management system, because in this ecosystem we won't just have the ICT but also other structures, so services to all of the regional structures, and these are different from ICT. So this means that we are trying to attach much importance to the service for the users, the external users, because we're not just talking about the regional users but also external users using our services. So I think that the real opportunity we have with this project, apart from the platform, similar platform, the standardization process and digitalization process, is the ICT substitution, replacement with the services themselves for our users. So our users have the opportunity to get to the services straight away. Perfect. You have added one of the most important aspects, of course. So thank you very much, Riccardo. Thanks, everybody, and see you soon again.